I was grabbing coffee with a defense analyst friend of mine the other day, someone who usually stays pretty clinical about geopolitical shifts. But when the news broke about the latest move from Washington, he just couldn't stop checking his phone. He pointed to a headline about an $11 billion arms deal and leaned in, and his voice dropped an octave. "You have to understand," he said, "this isn't just a sale, it's an overhaul. They're turning the entire island into a hedgehog overnight." He started listing off the hardware like he was reading some kind of high-stakes grocery list: HIMARS, M109A7 Howitzers, Altius suicide drones. He was particularly obsessed with something called TACE, a digital battlefield kit. He described it with this strange, almost detached fascination, Imagine every soldier with a secure tablet seeing the whole war in real time on a digital map. It's decentralized, it's mesh network, it's the future of asymmetric slaughter. To him, the $11 billion price tag was a masterpiece of deterrence, a long overdue injection of muscle into a democratic outpost that had been waiting for the other shoe to drop. But then I asked him about the pushback. I mentioned the $40 billion total budget being debated in the local parliament and the fierce arguments from the opposition about playing with fire and, wasted projects. And the atmosphere at the table just shifted instantly. My friend's excitement vanished, replaced by this tense, thoughtful silence. He looked at the screen again, but this time he wasn't smiling. He muttered something about how the bill always comes due, and how the same people cheering for the hedgehog strategy are the ones who have to live inside the spines. That sudden pivot from the cold, technical thrill of record-breaking weaponry to the heavy, uncomfortable reality of the political and social cost, it really stayed with me. It made me realize that this $11 billion deal isn't just a transaction or a headline for the hawks in D.C. It's a high-stakes blueprint that forces us to ask, at what point does the cost of unsurpassable defense start to reshape the very society you're trying to protect?
That opening, it just perfectly captures the powerful duality of this moment. On one hand, you have this technical thrill of all this new hardware, but on the other, there's the heavy reality of what it all means for national strategy.
It's a massive shift.
It is. So for this deep dive, our mission is really to unpack this record-breaking $11.1 billion arms package. We need to look at it not just as a financial transaction, but as a detailed blueprint for an asymmetric defense strategy, this hedgehog or porcupine model you mentioned.
And we'll get into the technology, the politics, the finances.
Exactly. We'll explore the shift to these asymmetric capabilities, the digital and space backbone that's required to make it all work, and crucially, the very complex and often transactional relationship with the United States.
Okay, so let's start with the money. This $11.1 billion figure. Yeah. It's just staggering. The sources all confirm this is reportedly the largest single U.S. arms sale to Taiwan in U.S. history.
Right. And it significantly surpasses the total sales of entire previous administrations. That sheer scale tells you right away this isn't just business as usual.
It feels like a statement.
It's a strategic mandate. It's more than just a big number. It's a commitment signal. And the real insight, is found in what they're actually buying. Historically, Taipei often wanted those high-profile, high-cost platforms, right. New fighter jets, big destroyers.
The big, shiny toys.
The big, shiny toys, exactly. This package shows a dramatic top-down shift away from those vulnerable legacy systems. They're moving toward assets built for immediate asymmetric deterrence and really for survivability.
So let's break down the deal itself, because the money is really concentrated in a few key areas, isn't it? It seems to be all about mobile kinetic power.
That's where the power projection is. The single most expensive item, clocking in at $4.05 billion, is for 82 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, and 420 of the ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles that go with them.
That's the long-range punch right there.
That is the long-range mobile strike component. And right behind that, you have another $4 billion, this time $4.03 billion, for 60 M109A7 self-propelled howitzers. Those two systems alone completely redefine the Army's depth and lethality.
And the other $3 billion, it's not just spare parts, right?
Not at all. That's where you find the things that make the Hedgehog so prickly. You've got Javelin and TOW anti-tank missiles, crucial Harpoon anti-ship missile kits, and high-end drone tech like the Altius autonomous air vehicles.
And I saw a big line item for tactical mission network software, which I'm sure we'll get to later.
A huge part of the puzzle. And this whole list, it perfectly aligns with the stated U.S. rationale. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency was very clear. The goal is modernization, maintaining a credible defensive capability, and ensuring regional stability.
Which in practice means...
What? In practice, It means giving a democracy the tools to survive a massive invasion attempt by shifting the focus from, say, defending the perimeter to defense in depth using all these distributed, hard-to-target assets.
So that brings us right to the core strategy behind all this, the hedgehog or porcupine concept. It sounds good, but what does an asymmetric approach like that actually mean in military terms?
Well, the core idea is deterrence through denial. It's a recognition that you just can't match your adversary's bulk, their sheer number of troops, ships, and aircraft. So you don't even try.
So you change the game.
You change the game. You focus on maximizing the cost of aggression to the point where any potential gain is just completely outweighed by the pain. The porcupine approach means shifting from a high-profile conventional defense to one based on, numerous decentralized, small, and highly lethal systems.
So instead of a few big, expensive targets,
you have thousands of small, cheap, and deadly ones. Instead of pouring billions into a handful of vulnerable aircraft carriers or heavy tank divisions, you use thousands of man-portable missiles, coastal missile batteries, and swarms of drones. The goal is to make the island a fortress, bristling with so many spines that an amphibious invasion becomes a suicidal effort.
Now, you mentioned that this has been a shift. I've read that this idea faced some pretty significant resistance historically within Taiwan's military. They preferred the big, traditional hardware.
That institutional resistance is such a vital piece of context. Professional militaries, they often favor the structure and, frankly, the prestige of conventional forces. Big tanks, fast jets.
I look good on parade.
They look great on parade. Shifting to an asymmetric model requires a complete overhaul of doctrine, of training, of procurement. It often means shelving some very expensive wish lists. The fact that this $11.1 billion package is so heavily focused on mobility, missiles, and digital command systems is a huge signal.
It signals that the debate is over.
It suggests that strategic necessity has finally overcome that traditional inertia. It looks like a genuine, irreversible strategic pivot towards survivability.
Let's zoom out a bit and look at the politics of all this. I came across this really fascinating account of a small business owner in Kaohsiung, a Mr. Wu, who runs a hardware store. And for him, seeing the headline about this $11 billion deal, it wasn't just a list of weapons. He said it felt like paying a massive insurance premium.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah, he was questioning if the partnership with the U.S. is becoming purely transactional, just a cold exchange of billions for a promise of security. There was this mix of relief that the big guns are on the way, but also this real anxiety about being a customer in this global security market.
And Mr. Wu's feeling that this is transactional.
Yeah.
It's deeply rooted in the political reality of the situation. Taipei sees these huge, expensive arms deals as a direct way to manage the relationship with Washington.
Especially given the rhetoric of past U.S. administrations, right?
Yeah.
The whole America First agenda.
Precisely. A massive arms purchase serves a dual purpose. It's military, of course, but it's also diplomatic. You had U.S. leaders in the past publicly calling for allies to pay more for protection, even accusing Taiwan of stealing our chip business.
So this is basically security policy and trade appeasement all rolled into one.
In a way, yes. This $11.1 billion sale sends a tangible signal to Washington, regardless of who's in office, that Taipei is a willing financial partner in its own defense, and one that's contributing significantly to the U.S. industrial base. It's a strategic move designed to hedge against any uncertainty in U.S. commitment.
A kind of political insurance.
The size of the check is a form of political insurance, absolutely.
And the timing of this deal was interesting. The U.S. approval was announced before Taiwan's legislature had actually allocated the money. And that legislature is deeply divided, with the opposition KMT controlling the majority.
And that procedural detail created an immediate, very intense political challenge. For listeners, the KMT is generally seen as being more open to closer ties with Beijing and has historically been skeptical of these big U.S. arms sales.
So Washington basically put them on the spot.
They did. There are historical precedents for this. Back between 2004 and 2006, the KMT stalled 3 crucial U.S. arms packages, citing costs and delays. By announcing this massive approval beforehand, Washington placed immense pressure on the opposition to pass the funding. The political cost of being seen to damage U.S.-Taiwan relations by balking at the deal becomes intentionally extremely high.
Okay, that sets the political stage perfectly. So let's dive into the actual hardware, the muscle of this new defense structure. Let's start with the big one, ATACMS and HIMARS. The sources say the first shipment of ATACMS arrived recently, so this isn't theoretical anymore. What's the immediate impact of having these systems on the ground?
The immediate impact is dramatic upgrade in deterrence. The ATACMS tactical ballistic missile with its formidable 300-kilometer range gives Taiwan the ability to conduct precise, deep strikes against military assets on the mainland.
So we're not just talking about defending the beaches anymore.
No, not at all. This range puts crucial military air bases, logistical hubs, command centers, staging areas. All of it is now within reach. It transforms the capability from purely defensive to having a genuine capacity to inflict strategic retaliation.
And that must complicate any invasion planning enormously.
Exponentially. The adversary can no longer assume their rear area assets are safe. But the launch platform is just as important for the Hedgehog strategy. The missile is fired from the M142 HIMARS vehicle, which is highly mobile.
To shoot and scoot capability.
Exactly. It's a distributed system that's incredibly difficult for an adversary to find and destroy in the opening hours of a conflict. Stationary targets are liabilities. Mobile launch-on-demand systems are vital for survival.
And it seems Taiwan really doubled down on this specific capability. The original order was expanded, wasn't it?
It was. They recognized its strategic importance. They initially ordered 64 missiles and 11 launchers, but they later expanded that to 84 missiles and 29 launchers.
That's a big jump.
It's a critical expansion. It allows for the simultaneous deployment of multiple HIMARS units across different parts of the island, which increases survivability through decentralization and enables coordinated strikes against a wider array of targets. It shows they're all in on maximizing mobile coverage.
Okay, so that's the long-range strike, but the package also includes a massive investment in something that seems more traditional. The M109A7 self-propelled howitzers. With a 40-kilometer range, how do they fit in with 300-kilometer missiles?
It's about layers of defense. The M109A7s provide that critical middle layer of fire support, bridging the gap between coastal defense and deep strikes. While ATACMS are targeting air bases on the mainland, the M109A7s are designed to defeat the invasion force itself.
So they're for the fight on the beaches and just offshore.
Exactly. With their 40-kilometer range, their job is to provide sustained high-volume fire. They're essential for hitting enemy transfer areas, disrupting logistical assembly points, and just hammering any amphibious landing. This provides that crucial defense in depth.
And there's an interoperability angle here too, right? These aren't just standalone systems.
An absolutely crucial strategic element. The M109A7 uses the same chassis and power systems as current U.S. military equipment. It has an advanced high-volt electric architecture. This is all intentional.
It makes logistics easier.
It simplifies logistics and maintenance enormously, especially if U.S. or allied support were ever required. In a conflict, using common platforms means you can tap into common supply chains, which dramatically increases the chance of getting resupplied and sustaining the fight.
We can't talk about HIMARS and Javelins without mentioning Ukraine. It seems like a real-world test case for this exact strategy.
Ukraine has been a massive, real-time case study.
Yep.
The lessons were brutal and clear. Small, mobile HIMARS units were able to strike high-value Russian targets' command posts, ammo dumps deep behind the lines with incredible precision without being easily targeted themselves.
And the Javelins against tanks.
The Javelins proved that small, two-person teams could take out huge, expensive, legacy armored vehicles with relative ease. Taiwan's procurement choices directly reflect this. They saw that technology allows a smaller defender to leverage mobility, precision, and speed against the sheer bulk and mass of an aggressor. They're buying systems with proven asymmetric lethality.
Okay, so from kinetic missiles to something even more decentralized and asymmetric unmanned systems, this seems to be where the U.S. contribution meets a really huge domestic industrial push. What is the U.S. bringing to the table with drones in this package?
The U.S. component includes the Altius autonomous air vehicles. These are high-end aerial platforms for various roles. But, the real story here is Taipei's commitment to self-sufficiency. The U.S. systems provide an initial capability and integration point, but the island's defense can't rely solely on imports, especially during a war.
And that leads right into the scale of the domestic program. The sources say Taiwan's executive Yuan approved a program worth about $1.4 billion US dollars just for scaling up domestic drone production through 2030.
It's a phenomenal commitment. They're recognizing that unmanned aerial systems are the ultimate porcupine needles. They're cheap, they're numerous, and they're expendable. The goal of this investment is twofold. Ensure a massive supply of these systems in wartime, and position Taiwan to become a leading democratic hub for unmanned systems manufacturing in Asia.
It's defense and industrial policy in one.
An aggressive one at that.
To bring this to a human level, I read about an engineer, a Dr. Lin, working late nights at a high-tech facility in Taiwan. She's not working on the next smartphone. She's perfecting the guidance systems for the latest generation of domestic suicide drones.
That's the front line of this new strategy.
Exactly. Her team feels this quiet pride. They know these loitering munitions are the needles that make the porcupine too painful to touch. For her, it isn't about aggression. It's about the sophisticated, almost surgical task of making her home a no-go zone.
And Dr. Lin's work is the physical manifestation of that strategy. The operational need is for systems that tightly integrate ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance with strike capabilities. It's about allowing the defenders to see and hit targets faster than the invaders can react.
So what are the key domestic systems they're pushing?
Well, we can look at three main ones. At the top, you have the high-altitude surveillance platform. That's the NCS-IST Tangyun 2.
What kind of drone is that?
It's a male-class airframe, medium-altitude, long endurance. You can think of it as Taiwan's indigenous equivalent of the U.S. Reaper, roughly. It can stay for 24 hours at 25,000 kilometers. This provides those persistent high-altitude eyes you need for tracking ship movement.
The early warning system.
Right. It's the high-end node of the sensor network.
Yeah.
Then second, you have the anti-radar weapon, which is vital for surviving the opening shots of a conflict. That's the NCS-IST Chenskang.
Which is a suicide drone.
It's a truck-launched anti-radiation loitering munition. Its whole purpose is to hunt and suppress hostile emitters, specifically the adversary's search and targeting radars. It's the crucial first punch to take down air defenses.
So it literally clears a path for other forces.
Exactly. You deploy these in swarms to crack open defended airspace. By neutralizing key radars, the Chenskang makes it safer for manned aircraft or the Tangyun 2 to operate. It's a huge force equalizer.
And what about over the ocean? Maritime awareness must be critical for targeting those Harpoon missiles.
For that, you look at the Albatross II. This is an evolved platform for target acquisition and battle damage assessment at sea. The key upgrade here is a synthetic aperture radar, or SAR.
And why is SAR so important?
Because it allows for wide area sea surveillance day or night, and critically, regardless of weather or cloud cover. That data feeds directly into the coastal missile batteries, giving them current, accurate locations for any incoming invasion fleet.
And all these systems have to talk to each other.
They're all designed to plug into what's called the T-Dome integration effort. It's Taiwan's big push to fuse all its air defense and counter-drone assets into one cohesive network, protecting mobile assets like the HIMARS from saturation attacks.
So why the massive domestic push, though? Why not just buy more from the U.S.? What's the core reason for insisting on domestic production?
There are two non-negotiable strategic reasons. First is supply chain control. Taiwan is actively eliminating Chinese origin components, GPS chips, sensors, flight controllers, from all its military UAVs.
To avoid backdoors or sabotage.
Or just a simple supply cutoff during a war. You have to be able to sustain production yourself. The second reason is market opportunity. The U.S. and its allies are tightening restrictions on PRC-sourced drones. This creates a huge potential export market for Taiwan's clean origin designs. It's security integrated with economic policy.
That brings us perfectly to the next critical layer. If the missiles and drones are the muscle and needles, then this is about the brain, the resilient nervous system that makes it all work. Because if a unit can't communicate, it can't fight.
That's the perfect way to frame it. I heard this story about a young communications officer, we'll call him Ethan, stationed on the northern coast. For years, his training was all about rigid hierarchies, waiting for orders to trickle down from some central command miles away.
The old way of doing things.
The very old way. But lately, things have changed. I saw a report on how soldiers like Ethan are now training with the Team Awareness Kit, T-AKE. It's a digital interface that turns a chaotic battlefield into a shared real-time map on a tablet.
So instead of just a voice on the radio.
Exactly. Instead of staring at a flickering radio, he's watching digital icons of his comrades moving in real time. He has the full picture, which gives him the autonomy to make split-second decisions himself.
And that experience perfectly illustrates why the Tactical Mission Network software valued at over $1 billion and this TAC system are arguably the most significant part of the whole deal. It changes the entire command dynamic.
Absolutely. TAC is a grassroots command system. Think of it like a secure military version of a shared map app, where every unit sees the same real-time picture on their phones or tablets. It creates a common picture of the battlefield.
And the strategic value of that is?
It enables decentralized command. In military jargon, it's called off-track tactic or mission-type tactics. The idea is simple. Instead of rigid, step-by-step orders from the top, you empower lower-level units like Ethans to make rapid autonomous decisions based on the commander's intent and that shared understanding of the battlefield.
So units can self-synchronize.
They can self-synchronize. And that resilience is mandatory because centralized headquarters will be the first targets in a conflict. If those central nodes go down, the defense must not collapse. TACE allows the distributed defense to survive and keep operating.
And the U.S. is helping to build out this network.
They're providing thousands of encrypted accounts to build out this resilient tactical network.
This decentralized concept, it feeds into a bigger idea I've been hearing about. The kill web. How does that work in this context?
The kill web is basically the overarching architecture. It's a distributed sensor-to-shooter network that spans space, air, sea, and shore, all linked by resilient communications. That's T-AKE and decentralized command and control.
So it connects the drone's eye to the missile launcher.
Using the soldier's tablet, exactly. The goal isn't just to have great weapons, it's to execute the entire sequence sense, decide, and strike faster than your adversary can. If Taiwan can make a decision and launch a strike in seconds while the other side is still waiting for orders from headquarters, they gain an overwhelming asymmetric advantage.
Now, for an island, space must be absolutely critical to this. The sources stress that sovereign space capabilities are not a luxury, but existential.
They are existential. In this small, high-density theater, land-based sensors have limited reach and air patrols are vulnerable. Space provides the persistent, wide-area sensing you need for maritime domain awareness and targeting. If your ground assets are blind, they're dead. Space provides the eyes.
And this requires some fundamental shifts in capability, right?
3 big ones. First is sovereign, layered overhead sensing. This means their own constellations of taskable satellites. We're talking optical, radar to see through clouds, and SIGINT to map adversary networks. Layering these gives you redundancy and precision. They don't fire the weapons, but they give the shooters on the ground the cues they need.
Okay, what's the second shift?
The second addresses the biggest vulnerability in modern warfare. PNT resilience. That's positioning, navigation, and timing.
GPS.
Right. In a conflict, GPS will be jammed or spoofed. Every modern weapon, every sensor, the entire TACE network, it all depends on precise location and, just as critically, precise time. If you lose PNT, you lose coordinated command.
So how do you build resilience?
You deploy hardened redundant systems, hardened atomic clocks on the ground for local timekeeping, terrestrial timing grids like LRN that don't rely on satellites, and multi-source fusion systems that are constantly cross-checking everything. The goal is that even when satellites fail, your missile still knows where it's going.
And the final shift is about keeping the data flowing.
Redundant and resilient communications. You need multi-path SDCOM, combining commercial EO and MEO constellations with terrestrial backups. And you need edge AI processing on the satellites themselves.
Why AI on the satellite?
Because bandwidth is limited. Instead of sending down terabytes of raw sensor data, the AI pre-processes it, filters out the noise, and only sends down the critical, actionable cues. It dramatically reduces bandwidth needs and speeds up the whole kill web.
So this whole architecture, it seems designed to flip the financial risk onto the attacker.
It absolutely flips the cost-exchange ratio. That's the strategic payoff of the whole Hedgehog model. Instead of buying $1 billion warship, you field cheap satellites, thousands of expendable drones, and mobile missile batteries. This forces the adversary to waste their multi-million-dollar precision missiles on your low-cost targets. It turns the economics of aggression completely on its head.
Okay, so we've laid out this massive technical overhaul, this digital architecture. But, like my friend at the coffee shop said, the bill always comes due. And the domestic political system is already struggling with this huge financial commitment.
The investment needed to sustain all of this is just monumental. President Lai is seeking an additional special budget of $40 billion, that's NT $1.25 trillion, to expand military spending through 2033. This goes way beyond that initial $11.1 billion.
$40 billion is a staggering number on top of the regular defense budget. And it sounds like it's far from a done deal.
It's facing severe resistance. The opposition KMT controls the parliamentary majority, and they've been very critical. And to be fair, their skepticism isn't unfounded. They cite real concerns over past delays in U.S. arms deliveries, which is a persistent problem, and worry about what they call wasted projects.
So the very funding needed to train people on these new systems, to maintain them, to build out the domestic drone industry, all of that is potentially held up by legislative gridlock.
Correct. And the political implication is critical. Taipei is showing clear strategic intent with this package, but they're struggling with the administrative capacity to execute it over the long term. This domestic deadlock signals instability in the funding. Most analysts expect a budget will pass eventually, probably with some compromises, but the delay itself highlights how difficult it is to sustain a massive, decade-long strategic pivot.
Let's talk about the geopolitical fallout, starting with Beijing. A sale of this size was always going to draw a strong reaction.
The condemnation was immediate and fierce. Beijing officially stated it is a grave violation of Chinese sovereignty and a flagrant interference in China's internal affairs. Chinese officials consistently call the Taiwan question the first red line that must not be crossed.
And how do they frame the U.S. motives here? Is it just about defense?
Chinese analysts argue that the U.S. is flexing Taiwan economically. They claim the main beneficiary is the U.S. military-industrial complex, not Taiwan's security. They see it as an attempt by the U.S. to use Taiwan to maintain its own military and economic dominance in the region.
On the U.S. side, there's always been this policy of strategic ambiguity. How does an $11 billion deal like this fit into that?
It's a dual-layered policy.
Right.
The U.S. is committed by law, the Taiwan Relations Act, to supply weapons for self-defense. That's the legal basis for this deal. However, the U.S. maintains its ambiguity on whether it would directly intervene militarily in an attack.
So this deal reinforces that ambiguity, in a way.
It does. By maximizing Taiwan's ability to defend itself, it makes any intervention decision for the U.S. easier, or maybe even unnecessary. The thinking is that if the porcupine strategy works, if it creates a formidable enough deterrent, then the question of U.S. ambiguity becomes much less relevant. #AUTRO.
So to bring this all back to where we started, with that image of the defense analyst, thrilled by the tech but sobered by the cost.
Right.
What we've really detailed today is the dramatic physical manifestation of that whole strategy.
It truly is.
We've seen this massive and what you call irreversible technical overhaul. It's a shift from hoping for big traditional platforms to actually building a decentralized, digitally integrated kill web. A network that's powered by the long-range punch of HIMARS, bristling with the needles of a domestic drone industry, and given a resilient nervous system by things like TACE and these crucial space capabilities.
It's a huge strategic pivot, all focused on deterrence through denial and survivability. But, the ultimate success of this whole porcupine strategy, it doesn't just depend on the hardware list.
Right.
It depends entirely on the political will and the administrative capacity to actually operationalize that digital backbone, the TACE and the kill web, and most importantly, on resolving the domestic political battles needed to fund and integrate these changes consistently over the next decade.
It's one thing to buy the tools, it's another to learn how to use them and to keep them sharp.
Exactly. The investments being made right now in things like sovereign satellites, PNT, resilience, and that integrated command architecture, those are the factors that will ultimately shape an adversary's calculus. They will define whether this massive financial and strategic gamble actually achieves its goal of ensuring long-term resilience and security.